And we're live. Hey, everybody. Thank you very much for joining us for another wonderful Free Assange Vigil. My name is Andrew Smith. With me tonight is my co-host, Misty Winston. Chris couldn't be here tonight, but he will be joining us in 2 weeks from now. Maybe next week. I don't know. I got to talk to him. We do have a very special guest, David McBribe, with us. But first, I do want to run through the numbers with everybody. We have 3,899 days of illegal and arbitrary detention for Julian Assange. It has been 863 days since the WikiLeaks founder was trafficked from the Ecuadorian embassy after being sold to the US and UK for a $4.2 billion loan from the International Monetary Fund to the nation of Ecuador. It's been 217 days since Vanessa Breitzer's January 6 ruling denying Julian Assange bail after ruling no extradition and personally ordering his release on January 4th. It's been 1,447 days of inhumane pretrial detention for the alleged Vault 7 whistleblower Joshua Schultz. At least 1,013 of those days have been spent under special administrative measures. We have 862 days since the political persecution of Olabini started at the hands of the Ecuadorian government. We have 67 days since Commander X was illegally taken from Mexico in rendition to the United States. His next court trial, I believe, is October 12th. We have 17 days of detention. 17 days of detention have been served by Craig Murray for the crime of publishing, and in charges where the British Crown cited his publication of Julian Assange's court trial to show why he was such an impactful journalist. Our three pieces of good news: Reality Winner has been home for 70 days now and is expected to be moved to parole on November 23rd. We have 515 days of freedom for whistleblower Chelsea Manning. You can follow her on Twitch at xychelsea87. And we have 165 days of freedom for Jeremy Hammond, but he still does have about 2.5 years of parole left. But yeah, how are you doing today, Misty?
I am doing very well. Two maybe quick points. Tomorrow is Commander X's birthday. There is a tweet storm being planned, so if you guys can participate in that, you can find more information on Twitter at @FreeCommanderX_. And then also, I did see word today that some people are starting to get responses back from Craig Murray. You can email him. You can also write to him snail mail style. I think email is a little bit better. It's just a little bit more guaranteed that he's actually going to get the letter. So you can find information. I think, let me double check what the Twitter account is for Craig Murray. Oh, come on, phone. It helps if I spell it right.
It's C. Murray Justice.
Yes, so at C. Murray Justice, you can find more information about how to write to him there. But I did see at least one person tweeting today about how they had received a response from him, and he enjoys getting the letters. I think that's probably very helpful to him to pass his time. So if you guys have time, write to Craig Murray tomorrow, participate in the tweet storm for X's birthday, and also write to Commander X too. He really enjoys getting the mail. I'm sure it's very helpful to have that to kind of pass the time and keep your mind off of things. So yeah, those are my two little points of whatever you want to call that information. Whatever.
We do have the fundraiser in the description for the Free Assange and the Damn Wars events taking place on December 10, 11, and 12 in DC. So if you could, please help us share that information around. Please donate if you can. If you cannot donate, please share the link on social media. It does make a big difference. But with that, I do want to say hello to David McBribe. How are you doing today, buddy?
I'm very good, thank you. I'm happy to be back on the show.
Yeah, I really appreciate you joining us.
Absolutely. If y'all don't know who David McBribe is, he is an amazing whistleblower from Australia. We've been following his case. We've talked to him a couple different times. Do you have any is there anything new going on with your case right now that we can let everybody know about, or where do things stand?
I was meant to be going to court in a month's time, in the middle of September, to work out whether I've got a defence under the Public Interest Disclosure Act. That was like a sort of preliminary trial. We don't know yet, but I wouldn't be surprised if that's adjourned, because we're in the middle of a growingly severe sort of COVID outbreak, and everything is slowing down to a halt. And the government has put a lot of massive security problems on our on the evidence in the case anyway. I mean, there has to be moved around basically in an armoured car. And so it's very hard for us to prepare our case. So we don't know yet, but I'm thinking there'll be another adjournment. One of the big things that the collapse of the sort of the regime we installed in Afghanistan has been very good for my case, because there's nothing illustrates what I've been trying to say, that the emperor has no clothes, than the sight of that helicopter flying off the top of, or from the US embassy, after they said that would never happen. And it did happen very quickly, and it just showed that, you know, if they were lying about that, what else were they lying about? And so I've had a lot of interest in the last couple of days. That I do feel it's a significant turning point for me, because it's proved that what I was saying was right, that we lied about everything. Our heroes weren't heroes, our villains weren't villains, our allies were no good. The war was a crock, basically, and that's becoming clear. And the adjournment should help me in that regard, because I can, if people in the media do their job, over the coming months, there should be more and more revelations about the fact that everybody knew it was a crock. But I spoke out, and I'm the one going to jail.
Yeah, that's how it always works, buddy. We punish our truth tellers in the West. That's what we do.
So what has the Australian media, like, how have they portrayed what's happening in Afghanistan right now? Because here in the U.S., it's a really weird, there's not really a political line that it's following. It's more of there's the people that are like, hey, we should stay and go back. And then there's the people that are like, no, just stay the fuck out. So, like, I don't know how, like, the Australian...
And it is through party lines. Like, there are some Republicans who are mad that we're leaving. There are other Republicans who are, you know, thrilled that we're leaving. It's like we have some lefties who are. It is really kind of a weird environment. So yeah, what's it like in Australia? What's the media been like? And what's like in
Australia? Luckily, there's a core. I would call it, say, about 30%, who can see that it's not about the defeat, but it's about the lies. And and there was something wrong in the state of Denmark, sort of thing. If this could happen, when we said that this would never happen, and people are making the Vietnam connection, which is good. Even my, you get feedback from people in the street, and someone who's a sort of a 70-year-old lady said to me, who's conservative, said, you know, this is just another Vietnam, and I can't believe we got led into it again. We fell for it, which is good. It's good that people are saying that. And but you're right, there is some disappointing. I read the Murdoch press yesterday, and there was some, you know, self-proclaimed security expert explaining why we lost, and it was all in conventional terms. We should have done this, and we should have done that, without acknowledging the fact that it was all a pack of lies, and it wasn't a matter of tweaking around the edges or tweaking this. You know, we never had the moral high ground for the fact. So I was disappointed to read that there was some people trying to say it was just, you know, a football game that we perhaps we could have won if we just, you know, if the last play had gone right or something, you know. And there's a little bit of that, but luckily I think that enough people are seeing through that. Yes, of course the right wing are trying to blame it. I saw a sort of a right wing politician trying to say, oh yeah, blame it on Biden, blame it on, you know, the withdrawal. It was all the withdrawal, but you know, and hopefully that is falling thin, you know, falling flat. I'll be pushing to say it wasn't the withdrawal. You know, we were set up for failure from the beginning. And don't look at the last administration, look at the last four. And
yes.
And then it was a mortgage, you know, it was a bit like the sort of global financial crisis. You know, we were buying houses we couldn't afford, we were never going to pay for. And it's not the purchase, it's not the fact that we defaulted 20 years later. It's the fact that we never had it was never going to work in the first place. And hopefully I'm going to keep pushing to say this is a symptom of a larger problem in that our governments repeatedly lie to us. And that is the central problem. And don't look at the past, look at the future. And the next time they come with a war for freedom, we know what it really means.
Hopefully.
The profits of Halliburton and DynCorp and McDonnell Douglas and fucking Boeing and all these. That's what it's really about. And it's a war for the coffers of the major parties. And it was, but still it was good luck for me, because it will really help me push the message to say, this is, this was your temple of freedom. It was a lie pushed by PR people, and everything about it was wrong. And it helped me because my critics would paint me as some sort of conspiracy theorist because I was saying everything is wrong. And they would go, oh, he's obviously mad. Everything can't be wrong. And now it's kind of been shown that everything was wrong. The Afghan allies were crooks. A lot of our so-called heroes were murderers. Our generals were not leaders. They were flunkies doing whatever they could for short-term political goals. So many people had medals for planning and this and that, and everybody was a self-licking ice cream. People are seeing that everything was wrong and that I wasn't a mad conspiracy theorist. It was just hard. There was no other way to put it, to say the whole pyramid was rotten from top to bottom. And it's turned out that it was. Everything was once you start not valuing the truth and valuing short-term political goals above the law, above doing the right thing, this is what happens.
Yes. And I really hope that because it feels like this isn't the first time that our governments have lied us into war. I'm really, really hoping that this time we'll learn the lesson and people next time will be more critical.
I have seen some hopeful things, and again, quite esoteric articles written by creditable people from good universities and I did see that phrase, just like you said, this may well be the last of the ridiculously unrealistic, selfish American expansionism. And that was great to see someone saying that, to say, this could be the tipping point where we don't go again. And that was not someone who was an activist. That was some sort of conservative sort of commentator. And that was great. Yeah. Even to see that mentioned, to say, this is, they were hoping, I think Biden was desperately hoping that China would kick off and no one would care about Afghanistan. But the good news is everybody saw the images and everybody is watching. And China didn't get to kick off in time to make a smokescreen. And people are like, yeah, really? And people are noticing, and whatever they take away from it. But yeah, you're right. Not all the media is really pointing the finger in the way I'd like it. And of course they can't, because so many of them were complicit in the false narrative.
Yes. 100%. What I find funny is that, Democrats are busy blaming Trump and Republicans are busy blaming Biden. And really this was Bush's, this was a Bush thing. That's who started it. It's just funny that they're all pointing fingers at each other. It reminds me of the Spider-Man meme. Everybody's pointing.
I choke when I saw Bush and our equivalent, John Howard, who was Prime Minister during Bush's time, going, it's terrible. They've ruined my fantastic creation. And he got away with it. People weren't able to say, oh, I'm glad that you've appeared. Here's some handcuffs. You're going to jail.
Mm.
When
Bush put out a statement. Are you kidding me, dude?
Well, what I
know. He should have been clapped in jail to say, we've been looking for you.
Yeah.
Because we've seen time and again where they've, like in Iraq, we've won and are ending the war and everyone's coming home. I think it's been like 4 or 5 times now. And I think
I
it's
saw Gren
the Biden
Greenwald.
administration said they were sending like 7,000 troops to secure the Kabul airport, which is more than we had
Mm-hmm.
operating in the country for the previous like 2 years. So
Mm.
it's even if they actually end it, because there's still the
That's
security contractors, special intelligence operating there, the CIA, Navy SEALs, and whatever other
it's very likely it
classified
gets
operations.
privatized. It's
Yeah,
very
yeah.
likely it gets people need to
Well, that's
not
why this has been
cheer too
good.
much, you know.
Oh, I know, but that's why this has been good, because it's going to be pretty hard for the private. That what you guys and I know, and it's pretty funny, but the public don't know. The next thing they'll be doing privatized public partnerships with the Taliban. The
Mm-hmm.
same guys. They'll be saying, yeah, we know where the former allies are. We'll go, like the French did in Rwanda. They'll be like, we can go kill them for you if you want. The double dealing will be incredible. And hopefully we can get that message out. The public can see that they never believed any of it. They were just in it for themselves.
Mm-hmm.
And they'll deal with anybody. And we did deal with anybody. We dealt with the very worst people. And but it was still good. The Biden's comment about, helicopters will never take off from the roof of the embassy. That was great, because even though it's not the biggest thing, it did show the average person that we are full of shit, and we will say anything. And the politicians will say whatever's put in front of them on a piece of paper, even if it has no relation to the truth. We were like the people we used to laugh at in Iraq, who were like, American troops will never enter Baghdad. And we became just like them, saying that night was day and day was night, and getting caught out for it.
Mm-hmm.
So hopefully we won't really see the full impact for a while, but hopefully the next time they try to drum up support for some sort of war, people will say, yeah,
Wait a minute, buddy. I don't
time
think so.
it didn't go so well last time.
Right. No, and you mentioned earlier that like Lockheed Martin and all that stuff are like really the only people. They're the only people that won. So I have the numbers here for everybody to see. Lockheed Martin had a 1,236% return. Northrop I cannot talk today. Grumman had a 1,196% return. Boeing had a 975% return. General Dynamics had a 625% return, and Raytheon had a 331% return. So those are your winners. That's who wins the Afghanistan war, and that's who was always intended to win the Afghanistan war. It's not. I hate even calling it a war. The Afghanistan occupation. It wasn't a war. It was an occupation, and the only people that won are defense contractors. That's it.
And I love to hear you say that, because I took a screenshot of that because I didn't have the figures. But I knew that, and it was good. I was speaking to a civilian who has no conservative guy, has no activist bone in his body, and he was quite amazed by that. I said, we were keeping it going and I said, it wasn't a loss. It wasn't a defeat for the people that mattered. It was a great victory.
Mm-hmm.
Dick Cheney's a billionaire. He doesn't see it as a loss. Bush is a billionaire. I'm sure Obama probably is. If you look at his secret accounts, it wasn't a loss.
Yeah, this occupation did exactly what it was supposed to do. People keep calling it a failure. It wasn't a failure. It did exactly what it was supposed to do.
Guys. And that is disgusting. It was a failure for the people who don't have arms and legs and who are dead and living in Walter Reed or whatever. But for a lot of people, unfortunately, it was a terrific success, and that is of course is sickening, and that's the message I need to keep banging on.
Mm-hmm. Yes. And I love that Biden, too, in his speech and then on Twitter later, very much focuses on the American lives that were impacted or lost. And then says that, well, we can't fight a war that the Afghanistan people won't even fight for themselves. Is he kidding me? Like 200,000 that we know of Afghan people were killed in this. And he pretends like they don't exist and that they're not like that somehow they're not holding up their end of the bargain and fighting for themselves. We were never asked to be there. You know what I'm saying? It's just really frustrating. The American exceptionalism that is just constant in these things. It's really kind of disgusting.
And anybody that's killed by American bombs, they don't count.
Right.
They were obviously non-Afghans, and he doesn't like. He leaves out the fact that the Taliban are actually Afghans, and they were actually in running an Afghan insurgency every bit as you know, in theoretical terms, they were just like the American revolutionaries fighting the British. It was their country. They didn't want to be ruled by a foreign power and the collaborators, and they fought against it. But of course, they don't count. How dare they defend their own country?
Right.
And I said that once, funny enough, when I was in the US getting a lecture from American military people about it all, and I pointed that out. They were all terrorists. The Taliban were all terrorists, and I was like, well, really, they're revolutionary warfare, not unlike your founding fathers, and they just couldn't see that someone fighting for their own country, was that. And you're right. It went back to American exceptionalism. If you're fighting America, you're necessarily a terrorist, even if it is your country, and even if America has invaded your country. It was they had no kind of sense of priority about maybe actually they're the patriots, and the people we're sponsoring are the collaborators.
And that we're the terrorists. We are the terrorists. Yeah, we're the ones invading and occupying a sovereign nation. We're the ones bombing and drone striking weddings and funerals and killing innocent people. Yeah. We're the I mean, I know that's hard for Americans to get because we've been propagandized, and we're always led to believe that we're the good guys. We're not the good guys.
I know. And the more I looked into it, and I saw some great work by Abby Martin about, the real origins of the war. And I didn't even realize this at the time, although I suspected it because I'd been to Afghanistan in 2000 when the Taliban were running it. And I knew a lot of the stuff that we said wasn't true. And it's quite dark, but they did actually eradicate the poppy because they decided, they had some sort of a council meeting and they decided it was un-Islamic and they didn't like to see addicts in the alleyways of Kabul, and they said, even though this makes money for us, we're going to eradicate the poppy, and they did, and they were the only people that could have done that. And yeah, it grew back. The poppy grew back when we invaded, and now it's probably get eradicated again, but it's thriving now. And we were such hypocrites because we tried to blame that on the heroin trade on them, but the heroin trade was actually. I'm told that the CIA saw it as quite a good way to make money, a bit like the Iran-Contra thing, and it was disgusting. The people we demonized tried to eradicate the poppy and did quite a good job with it, and yet the people we supported, like Hamid Karzai's brother and whatever, they were the big poppy growers, and we just said, oh well, we're just going to pretend that's not happening because that's unpalatable. And Abby Martin points out that there were more girls in school during the Soviet time because that was part of their thing to break down the barriers. And because we wanted to fight the Soviets, we sponsored the hardliner was Islamic terrorists, and they took the girls out of school. But that was the result of Jimmy Carter's sort of special ops branch who said, yeah, let's just find some fucking crazy people who can fight the Soviets for us. We armed them up. And then we said, isn't it terrible? People in Afghanistan won't let girls go to school. And it's like,
right?
They were the people we sponsored. They were the very people that we caused chaos. And by the time I got there in 2000, girls didn't want to go to school. Girls didn't want to get raped and killed. Mm-hmm. And actually the people that were doing that were, again, the people we sponsored, the warlords. And that's how the Taliban rose to power. We conveniently, we talk about women and children. We conveniently forget that Mullah Omar rose to power as a result of finding a warlord who killed these two 12-year-old girls and raped them and hanging him from the barrel of his tank. And that got so much popularity from the average Afghan who were like, this is what we need. We were sick of these warlords. And the warlords were sponsored by the US. So Mullah Omar was all about protecting the human life of his own people, and so we put out this crock about it's all we're there to protect women. We were protecting rapists and murderers as long as they were prepared to fight for us. We didn't really care who they were, but of course the PR campaign got carried away, put out all these false narratives. You know, we were the criminals. We were the ones murdering people in fields and burying them in shallow graves, and all the things that we said the Taliban did. And it was a very good article. Of course, it vanished without a trace, but written by an Australian journalist called Andrew Quilty, who was in Oruzgan, where the Australians were, and he went and interviewed people at great danger to himself. And he said, you know, about war crimes, or whatever. And they said it happened all the time. Every time the Australians came into a village, they just killed anybody they wanted. And he said, well, why didn't you report it more? And they said, we didn't trust the, you know, the NGOs. We thought you're all in it together. And if you just went and reported a murder by Australian forces to the Red Cross or whatever, you just end up getting killed yourself. We just trusted all of you. And it was a very depressing but true. And they had one of the brothers ends up joining the Taliban, and he's still in it. And he's really proud of it. He said, I joined the Taliban because the Australians came into my village and killed my brother, even though he wasn't Taliban. And then they tried to say he was Taliban, but they just summarily executed him. And, of course, I joined the Taliban after that. It broke my father. It broke up our whole family. And all these stories had a ring of truth about it. And that was in the Australian area, which was wasn't so bad. So you can only imagine what was happening in the sort of in the bandit country. Yeah, we were the bad guys. And until they're pretty pragmatic, but until we're prepared to admit our mistakes and say, yeah, we made some big mistakes here. We did lie, and we did demonize you, and we did come to a country without invitation. And we're not going to move forward. The good news is if we are prepared to, you know, have some sort of a truth and reconciliation, we will be able to move forward. But yeah, so in some ways, I'm very hopeful that we might now get change, because they weren't able to paint it as some sort of victory, or, you know, and I was the bad guy and everything was going well, because that was the way they were trying to do it. No, I was a danger to national security, and we've got this very important mission, and they were still trying to sort of do the old, we did something really heroic, and how dare this whistleblower, you know, in danger, you know, you see it in America all the time. And I like, you know, I hope we can help all your whistleblowers over there. I've just forgotten his name now, but who's the drone
Daniel
guy?
Hale.
Daniel Hale. Yeah, that's actually, he gave a speech a few years back, and it's one of the most like emotionally impactful anti-war speeches from someone,
gets me every time.
Yeah, who wasn't anti-war, right? It is.
Yeah, he's like me. He's like me. He's a guy within the system who was a true believer, and I love the way he said, "I'm prepared to go to jail," and you know. And he stood defiant. I think that was great. That's what
my favorite thing that he said in his trial was when he told the judge, "I'm here because I took something that didn't belong to me, human life." And it, because you know, when he first said it, you're thinking that he was going to say, I took this information and I exposed it to the public. And no, he said, I took human life. And that speech that Andrew's talking about is from the 2013 drone summit that Code Pink put on. And in that speech, and it gets me every time towards the beginning, because it's a room full of, not full of, but there are people in the audience who are victims of drone strikes or the family members of victims of drone strikes. And in the very beginning of the speech, he apologizes to them. And you can tell it's all over his face. He's haunted, you know, the things that he's participated in, and it's gut wrenching. But it's also very brave. Yeah.
And if you have contacts with his contacts, please give him my regards. And what I love many things about, I love his defiance and not taking a backward step and saying, you know, put me in jail. It doesn't make what you did right. But I also like the way, because he destroyed the narrative that they still try to put up, and you know, this, as I said, that conservative commentator tried to put up as late as yesterday to say, we were basically doing the right thing, and you know, we're fighting really bad people. He showed that the program was run by idiots, and we were just, you just said, blowing up weddings and saying, they must be terrorists. They live in Waziristan, you know. They live in Yemen. They must be terrorists. Let's kill them all. And he exposed that it wasn't some sort of, there was no such thing as surgical strikes or, like in the movies where everybody's very professional and sitting around and weighing things up. It was a chorus of idiots making terrorists. Every time we dropped a bomb, we made 10 terrorists. We made far more terrorists than we ever killed. And he made that clear to say, don't think, it's professional, out of some movie where they're, saving the day, like some sort of Tom Clancy book. It's not like that at all. It's one idiot covering up for another idiot. And it's not even, we're not winning the war because we're making enemies all the time. And everything that we say about ourselves is becoming, or everything our enemies say about us is becoming true. And we're just this greedy, rapacious sort of empire, I saw, I was on Soapbox a few years ago, and it was an ex-CIA person who said she used to debrief people, Al-Qaeda that they'd captured. And she said, she's obviously like me and Hale, and she's working the other side now, and she was saying, well, what was interesting about these operatives is they saw themselves as the sort of Luke Skywalker's the Rebel Alliance, and they saw us as the Empire going around in the Death Star, blowing up countries, and that that was true. We were not sort of some plucky sort of individuals we like to think we were. We were the Death Star, just going around and saying, well, we're going to destroy this. We're going to teach them a lesson by blowing this village up, blowing these people up. That'll teach them. We'd become
here
bad
in the
guys.
US, they've started talking about like domestic terrorists, and they literally like released a list of every single thing that any person could be on, and then openly started talking about using drones in mainstream media against domestic terrorists
Americans
here in the United States, on top of the disclosure that came out of the Pentagon that they have a 60,000 person private domestic military here in the US operating in both uniform and in civilian clothing. So we've seen in Australia an escalation where you literally have to show papers to walk into a building now. So I was just wondering what you thought of like the escalation of the police state domestically as is that like a growing?
It's a good question, and again, hopefully I've helped head off the sort of rush to war with China, because people are going to be like, really? They said it was going to be great last time, and it wasn't that great. But you're right. That's what they're pushing now in Australia. Whenever the government's struggling with some sort of embarrassment, they get the head of our CIA equivalent, a very second rate, comes out and says, "Yeah, we're looking for these hardline right wings," because they know that goes well with the sort of chattering class, what we call the middle class. Say, "Oh yeah, these hard right extremists," and you can tell that the people they're looking at are just the sort of like anti-lockdown protesters or whatever, and it won't be long before they're bursting in and killing them. There was an embarrassing situation for the Australians. You would have seen it because it went around the world, of them arresting this pregnant lady who posted on Facebook, go to the anti-lockdown rally. She'd shared something, and they were around her place and cuffing her and it's getting out of control here because they need some low-hanging fruit. And they're beating up this domestic terrorist. In fact, I think I almost got caught in a sting where I met a guy once who was all like really aggressive and really talking up, saying, "Oh, the government's really bad, and there's this sort of international Atlantic child kidnapping thing run by the government. We want you to join in the usual sort of stuff." But then he was like, "Yeah, we need to have an armed insurrection against the government," and try to talk me into taking over. And I believe he was an agent provocateur for the because it was so, so over the top,
Mm-hmm.
trying to get me to make some sort of an admission to say I wanted to take up arms against the government,
I
And
actually had someone when we first started, it was at our very first week of protests, come up to me in private and basically try to convince me to say that I would find someone to assassinate Judge Breitzer. And I'm like, no, you're fucking crazy.
Yeah.
So, yeah, like stuff like that absolutely exists. And it's something you
And
can
I-
Well, it
actually
just happened
see.
again in Michigan with Gretchen Whitmer. That this whole plot to kidnap and kill Gretchen Whitmer. It turns out there's like 6 guys involved and like 14 federal agents that have now been figured out that have been involved, and that's how it always works out.
Right. Like the
That's exactly what
FBI
they
was
do.
plotting to assassinate Gretchen Whitmer, and like 6 buffoons got caught up in their program, basically.
Yeah.
No, that happened in Australia 40 years ago. The guy called Tim Anderson, who's you might know him. He's a sort of anti campaigner against the sort of war in Syria, and very well respected over there. He's a professor, but when he was in his 20s, the feds did this kind of setup that he was to try, and the feds ended up planting a bomb in order to sort of pin on him, where they killed a garbage man. But it was all run by the anti-terror squad to try to find some sort of a scapegoat. And they, if you looked into it clearly enough, it was the government who did the bombing, and in order to try to get some points on the board by trapping terrorists, sort of thing. It's pretty disgusting. And you and I we can see that. Again, having been a military lawyer, one of the things that you sign off on is what they call information ops, and sign up false messaging, and you can see it a mile off when they when they're talking about we're going to sell this terrible this really dangerous right-wing cell, that they're doing it just for publicity's sake, and they will have more undercover operatives pretending to be terrorists than there really will be. They will beat it all up because it's all about getting some arrest. The story is the arrest. They'll arrest some flunky, and then they will publish on the front page of the paper, the police alleged that, and they'll have all these things. He was going to blow up the Harbour Bridge or whatever. And that will just be the police case. Of course, 2 years down the track, the case will fall apart. But they don't care about that. They just want the arrest, and they want more powers to chalk it up. It's a disgrace in Australia now. You have to get vaccinated. You will have to have a passport for vaccinations. They're arresting anti-lockdown projects. They've got a complete stranglehold on the media. False figures come out every day, and people think, it's all right, it's about COVID, and nobody makes the connection that it might be about COVID today, but it'll be about it will be about something else tomorrow. And it's convenient whenever the government's popularity dips to an all-time low, there's suddenly a cyber attack from China. No one else knows about it except the security services. And isn't it terrible that China has done this? And we need to be very careful and not.
Now we need to take more of your rights away from you. It's for your safety. It's for your safety.
Yeah. Australia is becoming a totalitarian state. There's no doubt about it. And that's why I think, despite the huge public support I've got, my trial will still go ahead, because once you become a totalitarian state, you cannot take a backward step. You just have to go on, regardless of the common sense of it. And they've also got another trial running where of a guy called Bernard Collaery, who was a lawyer. They sentenced someone called Kay, who was a security services agent, who complained about the fact that we were using security services to bug another country, but we weren't doing it for Australia. We were doing it for the benefit of an oil company. And this agent rightly, like me and like Daniel Hale, said that's not what we're meant to be doing. His career stalled. He made a complaint about it, and now he didn't go to jail, but they ruined his life, and he spent 20 years fighting this thing, and he got a suspended sentence by pleading guilty. But and his lawyer's facing jail, and people are beginning to see that our government's out of control, and the government still, even though it's nonsensical, that they still run this case because it just gets them more bad publicity to say that our security services will work for oil companies, not the people of Australia, and yet they go on anyway. They go on regardless, and so we have got to quite a bad state where the government sees it's us versus them, and anyone that's not in the government is an enemy, and we're going to put them in jail if they say anything. Journalists are afraid to cover the case even, and that's why I want to be like Daniel Hale. I want to go to jail proudly and just say this is more important than my own liberty. I completely stand by what we're doing. We are a government of charlatans and liars, and we are using national security as an excuse to clamp down on human rights. And it's not, unless we reverse the trajectory, life as we know it is going to come to an end, that's for sure.
Yes, it already is. And I think that's why they spend so much time and effort trying to keep us fighting amongst ourselves, the people fighting amongst ourselves. I think that's why they spend so much effort trying to escalate the division amongst different groups, however that may look. Because you're right, they do. I think that Western governments are starting to realize that the people are waking up to their bullshit. And that's terrifying to them. And I think that's why, I think that's a huge part of the reason why they're doing the whole domestic violent extremists and saying that white supremacy. I'm not saying white supremacy isn't an issue in the United States. It absolutely is. But it's being kind of dramatized and made to be a bigger issue than perhaps it really is necessarily, because they can use that to make people afraid of each other. And then that becomes the enemy. They need an enemy so that they don't become the enemy.
Yeah, no, I can confirm what you're saying is true, especially in Australia, where our terror. I know what these people are like, and they are backyard people with no and our existing systems are quite capable of dealing with them. We certainly don't need some super duper RoboCops to deal with someone in the outback who wants the right to protest or something. The idea that we are painting them as an existential threat is a lie. It's an absolute lie, and we are, of course. The terrible thing is we are creating the circumstances for hardline terrorists because we are becoming a police state. And if I get put in jail for 20 years for doing my job and abiding by the law and nothing changes, what am I going to do when I come out? I'm certainly not going to become a lawyer. But why wouldn't you join a hardline terrorist group? We are creating everything that we say is already there. We're doing everything we can to actually make it a reality by this kind of ridiculous crackdowns. Yeah, we're putting people in jail without following the law, thinking that that's somehow a good thing, and not realizing that is actually the opposite of what we should be doing.
It's the opposite of everything we claim to stand for.
Yeah,
I mean,
cool.
we're supposed to, we proclaim to be all about democracy and justice and fairness and truth and all of these things. And then we allow our war criminals to walk free and punish our truth tellers. And it's like a really terrible part of the human experience. We've always done this. We've always punished our truth tellers. We've always allowed corruption to run amok and never really do much about it to hold them accountable. And, it's really depressing, but I'm hoping, and maybe this is just me being naive and optimistic, but it feels like the tide is turning a little bit. I agree. Okay.
I do feel that. That's why I'm smiling. And in fact, I've got two anecdotes about that. The first one is about, there was a big artistic exhibition, a famous photographer who's got a lot of credibility in the sort of middle class world. She did a photo exhibition about whistleblowers called agonistes, which is as you said, is about the people who speak the truth. It's from the ancient Greek apparently, and suffer from speaking the truth, and unfortunately, it doesn't necessarily have a happy ending for it, but still that kind of pain of being a truth teller, but no happy ending. And that's been very well received. She probably would have won the major art prize in Australia for it. I was featured in it with 11 other people. And that's good because the art, like the Vietnam War, sort of art is very can be very persuasive. But I laugh. This is an anecdote about you, Mister, because I read your tweets and I read your tweets sort of rubbishing Biden. And I'm thinking, well, at least he's done some things right. And I used to think, well, God, it's not as if you're ever going to get rid of both major parties. But you never. But lately, I've been thinking maybe Mister's right. Maybe there is going to be a fundamental change where people can see both major parties are full of shit, and that there's no point going from one to the other, just changing from Pepsi to Coke, every couple of months or years. It's not going to make any difference. It's the same bloody thing. And for the first time, I'm beginning to think that enough people are beginning to see that. And it's not about this partisan politics is not going to change anything.
No,
when both sides are as bad as each other. And I laugh because I'm beginning to see that that's possible now. And I think that's great. That's exciting. As I said, I take my lead from you guys in the Vietnam War era when the people power, made the difference. And I think we can do that again. Just say, and you're right, to cut away the divisions and to say it's not about progressives versus conservatives, or it's about complete bullshit from both sides, and we need to recognize that rather than waste energy about pushing one team up of another. Just say the whole game, it's a crooked casino, the whole game is rigged, and we need to but people are kind of listening to that, and I'm hoping I've got some people to try to put the message out now. It's relatively small, sort of YouTubers and that kind of Instagram people. But
Speaking
I'm
of
really
YouTubers in Australia, do you know Friendly Geordies?
I do.
Okay.
He's a great guy, and in Australian terms, he's got a huge following.
He's like the Jimmy Dore of Australia, basically.
Yeah. He's sort of a comedian, but with a hard-hitting edge.
Yeah.
And he's not popular with the media because he doesn't, everybody gets a spray. Everything he says is always right.
Right.
But of course,
that's why they don't like him.
Awkward for people, yeah.
That's why people don't like Jimmy Dore, is that, he usually gets stuff right that they don't get right, and they're embarrassed because they're journalists and he's out journalisming them.
Yeah. And the great thing, we share there's a nice synergy because we share the same lawyer.
Good.
Friendly Geordies and I, and again, sometimes you get the most done with he's been sued in defamation, and again, I love him because he's like, yeah, bring it on. I'm not going to back down.
Yeah,
I'm going to prove it's true. He's called this politician corrupt, and he's saying, well, let's go to court and decide whether you are corrupt. And he raised $1 million, which is a big, in Australian terms, that's huge, pretty much overnight. And because everybody was kind of cheering him on, and it's great that we share the same lawyer, and we're saying, yeah, bring it, because there was another defamation action of one of these guys who's been accused of being a war criminal, and he was one of our big heroes, and that's kind of backfiring for him, even though it's not over yet. It looks like it doesn't look good for him, put it that way, and so defamation actions have been one of the things that have really helped us. And so Geordie's one is great. Hopefully he will go international. He's a funny guy, and he's been very helpful to me. He said he's going to give a quarter of his legal fees, or the lawyers are going to give it to my fund.
Nice.
And he's been very supportive of me. So it's it's great. There's been cracks, and the guy who was prosecuting me, our attorney general, you've probably got a few American equivalents, but he he had a great fall from grace because he was accused of a terrible rape, 20 years ago or something. But it was really the circumstances. He was like some of your typical American politicians he had a very dark hidden side. He was all like sort of family values and whatever, and trying to put me in jail. And it turned out he was pretty, he was like a sort of Geordies did a video on him called Australian Psycho, which is funny but very close to the bone,
Right.
And he's so far, a lot of the people who have tried to attack both him and me are falling like flies, because as you can imagine, they're not who they pretend to be, so it's cool. I'm glad you reminded me, because that makes me laugh, because he's going well, Geordies, and his enemies don't look so good, and it's great that we've got a growing legal team, and we've got another whistleblower who's taking on the gambling lobby, again, just showing that all these rules and regulations that we're meant to have are just ignored by the establishment, and people just don't. And 90% of the people working there are like, oh yeah, of course we just ignore the law. And every now and again you get someone who goes, hang on, we're meant to be enforcing the law. And then of course that's the whistleblower that's in trouble. But again, luckily my lawyers have taken on his case, and as we get a critical mass of showing that just about every one of our government institutions is compromised by lies and sleaze, and it's doubly funny because they're the same people who try to put whistleblowers in jail.
But that's why they don't want their secrets exposed. They don't want their lies and sleaze exposed, and that's why they go so hard after whistleblowers.
I know. So all the stuff we've been saying for years is sort of like becoming more and more apparent, which is quite wonderful. When we criticize as being conspiracy theorists, so much of what what we used to be conspiracy is becoming increasingly true.
Yeah.
The government working for oil companies, people involved in sleaze, the attorney general is actually a rapist, it's becoming like what the movies where the good movies where the corporate guys really are the crooks, and it's the little guy who exposes it, so that's good. We've got a new person. Welcome.
Hello, Jason Bermas.
Howdy, everybody. How we doing?
Good.
Good.
How are you, man?
Very good. Very good.
Good to have you, dude.
Good to be here.
So I was actually I don't know if you have time to keep hanging out with us, David.
Yeah, I do. Yeah, I'm loving it
because we're gonna do news and stuff. So it'll be awesome to have you hanging out. But yeah, how are you? How's everything going out in Iowa, Jason?
Iowa, pretty good. New York, not so great, dude. So I don't know if you've seen any of my recent videos, but they just put my 30-year-old cousin on a vent out of the gates going into the hospital. And his mother is also in the hospital, my aunt, and they're going to kill him. I'm very, very sure of this. My uncle has, basically, first of all, he put a trust into a system he shouldn't. He went into the doctor's office today after I had a conversation with him, and I told him he was probably going to have to litigate. We're not on YouTube, right? Because God forbid I tell the truth on YouTube. Are we on YouTube?
We are, but you're okay.
We are, but don't worry about it.
We don't monetize, so we don't really get hit as much or in the same.
You're having a conference with your lawyer. I'm now your lawyer. So it's all
he is a lawyer.
Privilege. So you're protected.
So obviously you guys know that I've been in contact with many people that are prescribing other medications for this outside of what they have given my cousin, which is remdesivir and antibiotics and a vet, again, 30 years old. And then my aunt, her kidneys are failing and they're refusing basically any treatment. And they've actually already discussed wheeling them into the ICU together to die together. That is the reality. My uncle went in there, talked about ivermectin and budesonide specifically, and the doctor there told him straight-faced that remdesivir was basically the same thing as ivermectin. I talked to Dr. Richard Bartlett maybe an hour ago. He called me. He gave a list of things to say before litigation to my uncle. I don't know. I think he might be broken on this. I'm not sure if he's given up or not. But I want to make it really, really clear that, I haven't just been talking about these things now well over a decade because I didn't believe them or I thought it was a farce. Specifically with the COVID issue, where, as you know, Andrew, I began to really rev up after we met in DC at the Action for Assange event, because I could see the lockdowns were now coming to America and that this was really going to happen. And now 18 months later, we're in a situation in this country where the supposed paper tiger of the United Nations is basically doling out not advice, but mandates that are then parroted by the Western establishment and put into executive orders that are hurting and killing people while enslaving the rest of the populace and trying to bring in what they're calling a vaccine passport, which is nothing more than the ultimate track, trace, database, medical martial law tyranny that they want for everything. For everything. And, it makes me sick to my stomach that this is continuing to happen. Joe Biden announced today that he is recommending, it's not going to be a recommendation, by the way, that everybody who's taken 2 shots within 8 months is now going to get their 3rd shot, as I specifically discussed with Alex Jones and others in November and December of last year. And it is not 3. They openly discussed in the very beginning of this. And when I say they, I'm talking about people like Bill Gates and Fauci and others on their behalf, 3 to 5 shots. Let me repeat that. 3 to 5 shots. And by the time we get to shot 5, there will be something altogether different. And there will be a new round of these shots, a new round of these. I mean, you really can't call them anything but lockdowns when you look at Australia. But here in the States, you're going to see selective enforcement and coercion through local and corporate mandates. And you're already seeing that with the Key to the City pass in New York City. I'm not sure if you guys have seen the list of things that Bill de Blasio has decreed you unfit to do unless you want to show your papers and take your shots. And you know how I refer to them. They are not vaccines. They are gene therapy and vector-based shots. They are hate and lies. But you won't be going to the movie theater, seeing live music, going to concert venues, museums and galleries, aquariums and zoos, professional sports arenas, stadiums, conventional centers, exhibition halls, performing arts centers, bowling alleys, arcades, pool and billiard halls, recreational game centers, casinos, adult entertainment, restaurants, catering halls, event spaces, hotel banquet rooms, bars, cabarets, nightclubs, cafeterias, grocery stores with indoor dining, bakeries, coffee shops, fast food, quick service with indoor dining, gyms, fitness centers, fitness classes, pools, indoor studios, dance studios, or sports classes. Obviously, that will expand. And obviously, that is not just going to be for New York City. It will be for New York State. And it will seep into other states that are on the East Coast, such as New Jersey, Connecticut, and Pennsylvania, very rapidly through the hysteria that is about to happen in the next few months. So, as you can see, I'm talking quicker than usual and a bit worked up. But shit's fucked up, bruh. I don't know what else to say. I love you guys to death, but shit is fucked up.
Shit is fucked up. I like fired up Jason Bermas.
Yeah.
We should be fired up about
the fucked
this.
part, right? While all of this is rolling out across the world, you have governments openly prosecuting whistleblowers and journalists, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's espionage to expose classified information of the United States now, and any country in the world can use that legal precedent. So if there's someone that exposes something that happens in, New Zealand, and that person lives in Denmark, they can then be arrested and extradited to New Zealand for prosecution.
Well, on top of that, on top of the fact that something that we've discussed at length, even when the Trump administration was in, with the Counterintelligence 2020 to 2022 document, where they were talking about public disclosure organizations, hacktivists, leaktivists in the same league of Al-Qaeda and ISIS and domestic terror. And now those next steps are here. And along with all that, you have these absurd fact checks. Let me show you maybe the latest and most absurd of these fact checks. So a document put out by the CDC in July of 2020, 13 months ago specifically talks about isolating U.S. citizens that are not infected with anything, that have not tested positive for anything, that are simply high-risk individuals into camps and sectors. That is not a joke. That is on paper. So as that document took 13 months to go viral and began to go viral, this is what Twitter posted. Made sure I saw it, and tens, if not hundreds of millions of others saw it. A CDC document circulating on social media details COVID-19 measures for people in humanitarian settings. Das humanitarian settings. According to fact checkers. Well, that's great. And they literally say refugee camps in the subjects. You can go to the document. It's right here. It is the shielding approach. Not only did they discuss the neighborhood camp sectors or communities, and again, for high-risk individuals, you never have to test positive for anything. They lay it right out for you. Here are the camp sector levels. This is still on their website. I mean, they're changing language. They're using semantics. They're waging not even lawfare, but authoritarianism against anybody who would speak out. And this is it, man. The buck stops now, because all this repackaged Great Reset, Agenda 21 bullshit is just that. This is it. This is the collectivist takeover of a predator class that does not want human freedom. They want to oppress us.
They are oppressing us. It's already happening.
Correct.
It's already happening. We're already there.
Correct.
And you're right. It's only going to get worse. I mean, it
gets worse by the day. Look, I'm going to keep saying this because I do believe in localized fighting. As I got this news yesterday about the ventilator, literally in the afternoon, it blew my mind. I saw a text, and it involved my aunt. My aunt's been a sick lady. I could see her going to the hospital, so maybe bad news there. But to find out that my 30-year, a kid I held as a baby when I was a teenager, okay, is on a ventilator straight to get there, that it is nightmarish. And I was actually showing my buddy around, who came all the way out to Iowa from New York. He was an ex-cop in the Bronx. He moved up into the Hudson Valley and was working the Poughkeepsie beats. Growing up in Poughkeepsie, I can tell you that that's not very pleasant, but I can assure you his Bronx stuff was even worse. And he realized he doesn't want the shot. He doesn't want his wife to get the shot. He's got 2 babies. He's trying to figure out how he's going to raise them amongst this madness. He loved it up here. This is a state that has open constitutional carry now. We've banned the vaccine passports, although it needs to go further. It needs to get out of the medical communities. We have a governor that's actually fought back against this tyranny in some sense. And I think that's what people are going to have to do. You're going to have to make a decision. Can you fight where you are and win? And if so, how do you organize now and rapidly do that? Or how do you reorganize somewhere else and ensure that the federal government and their allies, and when I say their allies, I really mean at this point, NATO, we all joke about UN troops being on the ground, but is that more of a possibility than ever? Let me just give you an example of how they could sneak them in here without some kind of COVID or pandemic level propaganda. They could simply do so with what's happening at the border and the refugee crisis there, and just say, you know what? We're going to acknowledge there's a humanitarian crisis on the border, 1,000 UN troops. Let it simmer for a couple months, 3 months. Get people used to it. Have them start.
That's the Ron Paul speech. What are you going to do? What are you going to do when there's foreign troops occupying Texas?
It's a great question, man. And how far are we away from that? I mean, we have no accountability in our elections anymore. We have no freedom of movement anymore, according to the authorities. Okay, we have CDC dictating mandates on behalf of the World Health Organization and a predator class that is literally killing our population when repurposed drugs such as ivermectin and budesonide have Oxford studies and others to be extremely effective against this, especially in early cases. But in many cases, in late cases, let's just bring it up here. I want to reiterate this one. This happened at Elmhurst Hospital just a few months ago. They had refused Desi Phipe's request to give her mother ivermectin when she first entered Elmhurst. Instead, they put her on a ventilator. They then gave her a heart attack as she was on the ventilator. Desi Fipe then lawyered up. She lawyered up with a group known as, let me see if I still have them up here. I hope I do. Yes, the FLCC and a guy named Ralph Longo. The first court order while she was on the ventilator, the doctors refused because, that's what doctors normally do when they're trying to help people and save their lives. A second court order by a judge, which was going to hold the doctor in contempt and arrest him if she did not get the treatment. Guess what? After the first treatment, she showed improvement. Now, this was localized Fox. They were brave enough to cover it then. It took 6 weeks of that treatment to get Desi Fipe, her mother, off of that ventilator and home. And none of them will cover it. Not even this local Chicago Fox affiliate. And the only reason I know that she got off the ventilator 6 weeks later, because it wasn't the media, it's that her daughter, Desi, had set up a group and finally said, Mom has come home after 6 weeks. we got her off the vent. Why is that not national news? This has never been about helping people. It has always been about control. It will continue to be about control. And the semantics and lies that they have played with, and literally changing not decades, but generational terminology, scientific terminology, such as herd immunity, is so dangerous, or that natural immunity can even occur. We've been told some of the most absurd things, bold-faced lies by these supposed authorities that go well beyond the bold-faced lies that I was told via the war on terror post 9/11. And, as you know, Andrew, I truly believe that the main reason that we are here is because we as a nation, and really the world, failed to recognize and then confront what had happened on 9/11, and that we were lied to, and that this was an international intelligence operation and not a U.S. inside job. But again, you had different players in different nation states. You had the Israeli role, the Pakistani role, the U.S. role, and the Saudi Arabian role, especially the Pakistani role. I'm not sure if I said the Pakistani role, but again, the Pakistani role is so out there that you have Joe Biden on tape talking about meeting with the money man behind 9/11, a guy who wired out $100,000 the week of the attacks, the head of the ISI, admitting it's classified, and somehow a zombie version of him is fucking president in 2021. Joey B goes full zombie. I mean, I don't know if you watched that painful speech yesterday about Afghanistan.
Oh.
Number one, obviously he didn't write it. Number two, he stumbled through it like, a devoid old man. And number three, I want to get out of there. We had no business being there in the first place. But the lie upon lie upon lie, of which he said it was just to go in there, is just wild sauce.
Mm-hmm.
But let's just talk about the bin Laden aspect of that. First of all, I was showing people, and anybody can look this up yesterday. I'm sure I could do it live and bring it up again. But if you type in NBC News, the Bush administration had signed off on going to war with the Taliban in Afghanistan on September 10th. They'd already had it. September 10th, the night before the attacks. Now, bin Laden, and this is in my film, Fabled Enemies. Dan Rather did a piece in January of 2002 where he had eyewitnesses from within a Pakistani hospital, both doctors and nurses, saying that bin Laden was there on September 10th in that hospital being protected by the Pakistani military. I mean, it's all on the record. Okay. Anybody can look that up. It is fact. And Pakistan may have been threatened in the background, but they were never part of this war on terror. Instead, it was Afghanistan, target Iraq, and then expansion throughout into Syria and even beyond, and into programs like AFRICOM for that dominance in Eurasia. And yeah, we just left, but we'll see how long we're gone. We'll see what that chaos brings. And I think the story is far from over there.
Yeah. And the whole, it's not about health. That was somebody. I was reading the chat because somebody said, "I pray Jason Bermas is wrong, but he's making far too much sense. He provided tons of facts." And I'm like, yeah.
The thing that I'm concerned about is all that biometric warfare that they learned over there, like the way that they had literally beta tested everything we're seeing roll out today in Afghanistan. And as that
Well, I'm
chapter
so glad you
closes
brought
and that
that up.
technology turns back to like the motherland, what are we what have we allowed to be created in the last 20 years there that's now going to be
I love when
weaponized
people
and
say
used
that's
against us?
conspiracy theory shit too. Y'all don't think that they're capable of this shit or that they're willing to do it. These are psychopaths. I just talked to Professor Anthony Zinkus the other day, and he is a mental health care professional. He knows what the fuck he's talking about, and he also works hand in hand with politicians on a regular basis. And he straight up said, "We are ruled by psychopaths." This
It's
is not.
sociopaths too, but you're right. Psychopaths
Yes.
will also because they're in it for themselves, but they'll do harm to us.
Right.
I want to point out, Andrew, I've been harping about this biometrics. I'm encouraging people to check out Andy Jacobson's work. First Platoon documents a lot of what Andrew just talked about on the beta testing of a lot of the biometric technology that you're seeing. But now that 2-decade-old, 1-decade-old biometric technology is in the hands of the Taliban. Oh, weird. Like, again, the Taliban didn't go anywhere. There was all this talk that, we were going to bring democracy there or stabilization. We were going to take away extremism. Again, anybody can look up, again, in the summer before, they wanted a big Chevron oil deal. And they said, hey, it could be a carpet of gold or a carpet of bombs. Taliban didn't want to play ball. Hamid Karzai gets installed, ex-Chevron executive. And then suddenly, his brother Waleed becomes the top opium warlord in the region before being shadily assassinated by one of his inside guys. Nothing to see there. By the way, they tried to take out Hamid Karzai several times. I think he survived at least 2 or 3 real attempts where they shot up his vehicle or killed bodyguards and things like that. Obviously, this is a very corrupt region. But just like you said, Andrew, that biometric technology was beta tested on a large scale populace. And now we are seeing it come home to roost in real time. And that's something that people are not aware of. They're not tapped into, because another big thing to me is that this whole movement of mass obviously has nothing to do with your health, and instead is getting you ready for more of this transhumanism. I had to sit through a commercial where Lysol was showing all of these children in masks like it's normalized. And by the way, have you guys seen my Earth 2100 watch along yet?
I don't think so.
The piece that you did was basically like a pre-built propaganda package, that one?
Yes. So
I fell asleep to it. I didn't watch the whole thing.
No, I understand, but listen, it was long. It's hard for me to get through the whole thing, but I was so hyped up on it. And listen, when you're watching John Podesta, Jones, and was it Woolsey from the CIA, Schmidt, Fauci are in it. I'm trying to think who the last one is. There's another person in there that was kind of important as well. But I was watching old footage of myself talking about basically the swine flu era and the beta run there and the empowerment of the UN, and them talking about 2 and 3 shots then, H1N1, H5N1, these different rules, throwing out quarantines. And I had talked about how they were doing predictive programming, and there was this new special pushed by ABC News with all those players. Let's not forget, Van Jones just got $100 million from Bezos in the past couple weeks. I'm sure he's a legit journalist, everybody. Yeah, I'm sure he cares about everybody. And in 2009, they did this 2-hour, with commercials. So it was 1 hour and 20 minutes, cartoon piece of a girl that is born in 2009. And it goes all the way to 2100. So she gets into her 90s and she's like, I survived. And there's every disaster imaginable that they're blaming on climate change. Now, here's where it gets interesting. Within the first 30 seconds, she says, I've seen New York City under full quarantine. Quarantines in New York City. They show you the new normal, by the way, there in this. They predict masks on humans as climate change causes all these bad viruses, and Anthony Fauci comes in and explains that as well. Refugee camps also in this. The destruction of the suburbs, which we're now seeing in real time in this. And my point is that this thing is not predicting 100 years in the future, as what they ignore are things like Neuralink that are now being pushed. Automation really isn't there in this future. Instead, what it's pushing is you're going to live in smaller places. You're not going to have water pressure. It's your fault. You're going to mask up. There's going to be diseases. There's going to be all these problems. By the way, they put geoengineering in there as well. Cloud, basically blocking the sun. They block the sun in it. Again, all of our faults. And all of these things are not 100-year window, right? They're to prepare you what they've done now in the last 10 to 20 years, and then bring in their little UBI solution and their automation nation and get ready to replace us. Listen, they put it on paper. And when I say they, everybody goes, who's they, Jason? Oh, I was talking to this woman who's supposedly doing this documentary. Looks like it's going to be a big hit piece, guys, but maybe I'm going to be involved. Maybe I'm not. So who's they? And what are you talking about? And I say they tell you that this is the bio-nano era, okay? And this is NASA, but I want to reiterate, DARPA, the FBI, the CIA, ONI, every agency that you can imagine this document is drawn from in 2001. And they happen to predict what? That in 2020, the bio-nano era will begin. Well, it did. They just injected a shit ton of people with bio-nanotechnology. After that, they want the virtual era. They don't know how long everything else goes on. There's a big question mark there in 2001. Who knows if they've war gamed it or AI'd it by now? But the virtual era, folks, that means you're fucking dead. You're an uploadable piece of mass. Your soul is gone. You are no longer, you are beyond transhuman, okay? And this is what our government officials and leaders, that man, Dennis Bushnell, that put together that document, was on tour. He was the chief scientist at NASA. Then he was with NASA during the Apollo programs. Then he is still the chief scientist at NASA now. He is a bureaucrat you've never heard of. He's a man I have on tape talking about Malthus 101, population control, re-engineering the human species. Oh, and in 2010, having put 10,000 brain chips in human beings already. He says some other wild shit too, like, I don't know what humans are going to be doing in the future. We're not sure. Really, we're not sure what humans are going to be doing in the future. Very assuring.
That sounds very exciting. Right?
Andrew, your definition of exciting and my definition of exciting are a little different.
Should I play some of that? Because it sounds so wild. People are like, people think that like I'm pulling their leg, that no one would ever say that. Because like, again, I get asked this by this woman, and she says the same thing. She's like, who are you talking about? And I named Dennis Bushnell because I think it's important that he talks about these things very, very openly. I think what I should do is just play this last 2-minute clip where he literally says that essentially, what can the machine, what can we do that the machines can't? And he goes, the answer is nothing. He goes, the answer is nothing. And I'm just going to, let's bring it up. Hold on.
The ecosystem appears to be crashing. Freshwater shortages, you people know that.
Hold on. We're going to bring it to the last 2 minutes because we don't want to bore you too much. We don't want to go too wild here. But yeah.
Might be overload.
Overload, exactly.
The humans increasingly can't compete. I have a friend, Steve Thaler, who has developed an imagination machine, okay, which is a neural net which he trains and deprives of all rational input, and this neural net sits there and dreams like people dream, producing new ideas 24/7, 365 on milliwatts, and he has a chronic neural net sitting in the weeds, recording all of these new ideas and checking them out for various problems and metrics. This thing has produced better toothpaste for Palmolive. It has produced better warheads for the Air Force, and it produces far more ideas, far faster and cheaper than buildings full of people. Okay? So, along with all of the other jobs which the machines are, and I've got charts on this. Okay, I have tracked which jobs have gone, which ones have come in. There's a magnificent book on this called by Martin Ford. It's called Lights in the Tunnel. Okay? And if you can sleep well after reading that book, okay, then you're not quite as sensitive as maybe I thought you were. I mean, what people will do all day is not clear.
Oh.
What we're doing with these, and this is only one of the 7, okay, is that the machines are taking the jobs. And the humans increasingly can't compete. We're also becoming cyborgs, okay? We have cochlear implants, artificial
I love how he points at himself like we.
Well, wait. Here it is. Here's where he talks over. So you just heard retinal and cochlear implants. All of us are pretty privy to that. But here he's going to talk about super soldiers and brain chips.
To refrain the prosthetic limb communication, brain chips. We put brain chips into about 10,000 people. It affects congenitally defective brains. Trump is working on brain chips or super soldiers. 15, 20 years out, if you don't have the latest chip in, you can't compete, particularly with the machines. Okay? So we are merging with the machines. Okay? There's some really massive effects of the IT, bio, nano, quantum energetics tech revolutions that are now on a double exponential.
Double exponential. That's 11 years ago now, that speech. And when you just peruse, you don't have to read the whole thing. Just peruse through COVID-19, the Great Reset by Klaus Schwab. And it's all about this fourth industrial revolution, the merging of man and machine, bringing in automation and the virtual world. And they have been open with telling us that we've had it too good for too long and we're the issue. And some of these people have openly talked about population implosion. You know, I've also been playing clips of Musk, who you know I'm no fan of, frontman for DARPA in many, many ways, and the military-industrial complex. Those contracts, again, with Starlink, Blackjack, DARPA's internet went up with Starlink. SpaceX, their main contract is to move military cargo via those rockets. Okay, Neuralink, that technology is DARPA tech from 30 to 40 years ago. And actually, when you look at these documents that I go through, this one in particular, they openly tell you that they inventory these types of technology for 30 years and then sometimes 40 and then distribute them. Okay, so there's like a 15 year to produce, 40 years in inventory example. Here's another one, 10 years to produce, 30 years in inventory. But even Musk admitted, first of all, within like this same little speech, first of all, he's talking about mRNA tech and reprogramming our DNA, basically de-aging. But then he also talks about how there's not overpopulation. And this idea is kind of, put out there because people live in cities, but things fall from the sky all the time. And the chance of it hitting a human being is actually minuscule. So my opinion on this. I think they want less people to manage. They do not want to share technology that would empower us, and they would rather use the technology that I just went through to enslave us. And right now is the rollout, and they want to get you less and less comfortable with your human body. That is what that mask is about. And then more and more accepting of, forget about this trans movement of he, she, I, her, the, what, who cares? But into the non-binary now, zeros and ones, that's what they really want. They want you to believe you can be a leprechaun or a unicorn or whatever the fuck you want, because Ray Kurzweil has been telling you for years, and also working for Google on their Stopping Death division, Calico, anyone can look into that he's going to resurrect his dead father. They're both going to travel the multiverse as beings of light and just take on whatever forms they are. That is, somebody who's been given a lot of resources and very much behind this transhumanist movement. So, I think that people think of this stuff as sci-fi, but when they start getting into these high-level people that have had access to technology we can only dream about, okay, and the white papers and really the documentation of, people like, or I should say groups like the Council on Foreign Relations, the Trilateral Commission, the very, weak view we get into Bilderberg. You see that these same people are pushing for global governance at the same time. So look, man, I'm not a mark of the beast or, like a biblical guy, but you can see they are trying to consolidate power. They are trying to take over evolution of the human race, and they're literally trying to enslave our minds first. Eric Schmidt, who wrote this book in 2013. I would also encourage people to read this if they don't understand what transhumanism is. Eric Schmidt, the guy behind Google, Alphabet, wrote The New Digital Age with Jared Cohen of the CFR, another big one, literally reshaping the future of people, nations, and businesses. WikiLeaks is discussed a lot here. And a lot of the things he says about WikiLeaks actually come true later on. This is back in 2013, back in the day. And, this book is all about reshaping the future transhumanism, finding one answer. That's what Schmidt wants you to have. Now, is one answer always going to be the right answer? Obviously not. Not unless we're omnipotent. Not unless we're all godlike, right? We're going to get things wrong. We're going to have different opinions. This is it, man. This is the takeover. And I didn't think I was going to get that deep into it. I guess I didn't know where we were going to go on this thing. But
we're just letting you go, homie.
Right? I love
we're just
it.
letting you go. Yeah, we're just letting you go.
And again, it's hard to convey this. It's deep stuff. I went out to Limp Bizkit in Des Moines last week, right? I think it was like a little bit over a week ago. They ended up canceling their tour after that, COVID. I'm amongst 5,000 plus people. We're all having a good time. But the day before that, I called R.A. the Rugged Man. I took him to breakfast the next day, and I was with his DJ. And, I was just rattling off like Jason Bermas. They were asking me questions. And I got a text from Rugged Man the next day. He's like, dude, you ruined my DJ's whole day. And and I'm just like, look, I'm not trying to ruin anybody's day. That's the other thing. Despite all the nonsense and the things that are personally going on with me right now, and the texts and the phone calls I'm having, conversations with my family that are tough, I'm trying to keep a smile on my face. I've always been a positive guy. I'm not a defeatist. I'm not somebody who says, we're already beat. You can't do anything. You don't have any power. That's all bullshit. That's how you lose. Okay, that's laying down is how you lose. Giving in is how you lose. At some point, other than navigate it, you also got to look at all your blessings. You know what I'm saying? I was able to go to those concerts. I got to take my nieces to the fair. We had a great time a couple weeks ago. They're going to start school. They're not in masks. We ban masks in this state for kids. So, to think that we don't have any power, that's what they want us to think. And now more than ever, we have to organize and be civilly disobedient to just about everything they ask of us and go harder.
Yeah, we talk about that all the time here, just like staying positive. I mean, that's why we do some shows where it's not so serious, because on this show we talk about, the torture of journalists and the persecution of whistleblowers and genocide and war crimes, and it fucking sucks. And so every once in a while, and I survive on gallows humor. Like, you have to find things to laugh at. You have to find things that are funny, and that can keep your spirits up. But if I didn't think that there was hope, I wouldn't fucking do what I do. And I think we all kind of feel that way. Like, that's the only reason why we continue, is because there is hope. I mean, we were talking about earlier with David that we can see the tide turning. We can see that, there are a lot more people talking about Daniel Hale and Julian Assange and Edward Snowden. And that's when we're starting to see people wake up to the reality of, the corruption at elite levels. And that's a good thing. But we have to just keep pushing. I mean, they're gonna, and I think that what they're doing now, you mentioned earlier that they're doing all of these lockdowns and all that stuff, and at the same time they're doing all of that, they're also trying to take away our right to protest. There are anti-protest laws all across the country. They've passed multiple different versions in various states, and there are still more. I think we still have 4 in Ohio, and they're going to continue to do that. They want to crush dissent at all levels, and we have to be mindful of that. Not enough people are paying attention, and I get that there's a lot going on. They're throwing a lot at us, but we have to be mindful of what's being taken from us. And it doesn't matter. Like, listen, y'all, I don't care what you think of COVID. I don't care if you think it's 100% a hoax. I don't care if you think it's the worst thing that's ever happened. I don't care. It doesn't matter. What you need to be mindful of and wary of is the way that it's being used to take away your rights. They do that all. How do you think we got the Patriot Act? They scare you and then they take away your rights. And that's it's a formula that works.
Why I've called into George Galloway once, and we'll eventually do it again, is because he's very pro, hey, just follow them and do what they say, but doesn't address what happened to Julian in response to coronavirus, right? Like, they moved 60-some sick patients into his wing of the prison. They turned his heat off because they said the air that circulated through in the wintertime to keep everyone warm would get them sick. So he had to insulate his windows with fucking books while not having his warm clothes to wear because the prison denied them to him. You had him not able to visit with his lawyer for 6 months because there was a list of people that had to meet with their lawyers, and they had minimal staff and the ability to hold a video conference with one prisoner at a time through the conditions. So it's even that level of human rights violations that are going on right now, to where you have people in mass detention camps inside the US and their only way to meet with their family is through a video link, where you can't even do in-person prison visitations in most places across the country now.
And the waiting list for those video link visits are extremely long, and it's very difficult to get one. So it's like extreme isolation for people in prison right now. So
Guys,
there
I'm
we
gonna
are.
have to go.
Thanks for
Jason's
coming,
been
David, and updating us about your case. It's always good to talk to you. We appreciate you. Do you want to tell everybody where they can follow you on Twitter and stuff so they can keep up with your case and support you however they can?
My Twitter account, Murdoch Cadell. And I'd love to get followers or readers, or that would be great. And I've got a GoFundMe, which is called 50 Years in Jail for whistleblowing on the ADF, Australian Defence Force. And there's a petition you can sign too on change.org. So, but I'm grateful for the support. I always have a laugh when I speak to you guys. And keep up the good work. Well done.
We will. You too, good
Thank
sir.
you so
we
much.
appreciate you. Yeah.
Okay.
Tell
We'll talk
Friendly
to you
Jordan we
soon.
said hi, by the way.
Yeah, we should get him on the show, Andrew.
Yeah, get Jordan on the show. He'll make you laugh.
Yeah.
Okay.
Thanks,
Bye.
David. I love talking to him. What a good dude.
Right. Do we want to talk
Yep.
about Craig Murray? Do you want to talk about Craig Murray with us, Jason?
Yep.
We can talk about Craig Murray.
Let's do some Craig Murray, dude.
Cool. So the thing that I have pulled up is a statement from his wife, but just to give a little bit of background. Craig Murray was cited for jigsaw identification, which is literally just telling people things. But they didn't actually say what he identified. They just said that it could be someone could be identified by what he had printed. The more disturbing thing is the fact that in his actual indictment, they cite his reporting on Julian Assange's court case as why he's such a prolific journalist. Throughout the process and punishment of this case, he was blocked from going to Spain to testify in the UC Global case, where a private security firm manipulated the Ecuadorian government to allow them to literally turn the Ecuadorian government into an espionage operation against Ecuador and Julian. And they blocked him from in-person testimony for that and then put him in court for 8 months. So what I have pulled up here is the...
Jail. Put him in jail for 8 months.
Sorry.
Not court.
I can't talk as fast as Jason Bermas and get it all right. But this is a statement from his wife about the first time she actually has gotten to visit him after he's been in prison for 12 days now. Well, 12 days as of then. My husband was incarcerated 12 days ago, and today was the first day I and our 2 sons were able to see him in person. Seeing him was a shock. While we had reassurances from the HMP Edinburgh's governor that Craig would be treated as a civil prisoner, which ought to afford significant privileges compared to the treatment of criminal prisoners, my husband was dressed in a prison tracksuit when we finally got to see him. He had asked the prison staff about why he had to wear it, given that in his cell he's able to wear his own clothes. He was told that it was to prevent him from potentially escaping in civilian clothes. We tried to keep our visit light and cheerful, especially in the benefit of our 12-year-old son, for whom, out of Craig's 4 children in this situation, is undoubtedly the hardest to deal with. Up until now, he coped okay on the understanding that his dad was spending some time in a sort of 2-star hostel arrangement. Today he saw his father unshaven, slightly unsettled, and in a tracksuit. It upset him a lot. While in prison, officers seem to think that Craig may have been a flight risk given the civilian clothing. His 12-year-old son would have been happy to reassure anyone that his dad, whom he has never seen in a sporty lad dad clothes before today, never once shown any signs of spontaneous running in any situation ever.
I love that she has a sense of humor
Right.
about that. That makes me laugh. But seriously, though, think about it. If anybody knows who Craig Murray is, can you imagine him in a tracksuit ever? Because I cannot. I can't. So that is a little funny.
When Craig was asked for the release on tag paperwork from the prison, he was told that he is not eligible for release on tag because he is not a criminal prisoner. We are trying to verify the claim, and I am yet to find anyone that can give me a logical explanation of such a potential absurd rule. Why should my civil prisoner husband be deemed a greater damage to the public than the criminal prisoner, and how would this fit with the presumption against short sentences Act the Scottish Parliament passed in 2018? Why was he not given the paperwork? Please keep writing him. Your letters and support mean the world to him, and make time in prison pass faster than anything else. Thank you for your support and kindness. We all, family, the campaign team, and Craig himself deeply appreciate it. And keep speaking out about the injustice of this case. If we do not, then the legal precedent set with the 21st century in Scotland and the UK will not be undone, and it will continue to affect us all. So, the UK has literally done a hostile takeover of their own country. They've gone as far as to pass laws that, in writing and in the amendments that they rejected, justify and make legal child rape, human trafficking, literally any crime that exists as long as it is in the financial benefit of the United Kingdom to be performed.
And they're trying to redo their the Secrets Act so that they can, if a journalist publishes anything that they deem embarrassing or whatever to the government, they can jail a journalist for 14 years. It's amazing what they're doing, and they're doing it all out in broad daylight. Just nobody's paying any attention.
And it goes right along with the lockdowns that are happening in their country, because they're one of the worst. They get thrown in their houses. You're told you can go outside for 1 hour a day to exercise if it's approved. We were on a live stream with them while they were outside of Julian's Court, where there was a representative from Reporters Without Borders that was getting chased around by 9 police officers. Like, the level of authoritarianism has exceeded all expectations in my lifetime.
Well, I wouldn't go that far, because I mean the nightmare could get worse.
Oh,
we've seen it get worse in other areas.
Yeah.
And don't get me wrong, expectations would think that people are going to stand up to this. But you're right. These authoritarian dictates have gotten more and more outwardly criminal. Like you said, they're doing it in broad daylight. And here's the thing, just because something is the law, it doesn't make it right. Period. If you haven't seen lately, there are now 2 separate areas that have criminalized speaking to your neighbor. And I believe it's Australia that you can get. There is now a list of fines to the tune of, I believe, $3,000 if you get caught speaking to your neighbor. Now, I want people to think about this. You go all the way back to when Kevin James, maybe 4 weeks into this pandemic, did that little bit where, in the very beginning, he shakes a guy's hand on a park bench, and all of a sudden they're on the run and in the woods, hiding from the police to get to them. But we're there. You guys see that? Do you remember that? I mean, now we're really here. We're like, if you're caught without a mask on in a public setting, and you shake another human's hand and say hi, and someone takes a picture of it, like in that skit, and snitches you out, there are criminal consequences for that.
Niels Melzer, the UN Rapporteur on torture, right? Like, a non-political appointed position, like a person whose job it is to investigate torture, has come out and said, I don't understand how Western governments around the world are treating their civilians like criminals or like the enemy. Literally, like, most Western countries in Europe have some kind of uprising taking place right now. Australia is the exact same way, but it's just not covered by absolutely anybody anytime. Well, it is, but
huge
I mean, like,
protest,
mainstream,
huge protest. Thousands upon thousands of people in the streets protesting these lockdowns and all the mask stuff. But it makes me depressed because the United States ain't got shit going on. Ain't got shit going on. And again, I don't care what you think of COVID, because people are going to, I can't believe you don't want to wear masks with the COVID. Blah, blah, blah. I don't give a shit. That's not what this is about. This is about the fact that this is being used to take away our rights. Period. It's not debatable. It's really just not. Look at what they're doing. And it's only going to get worse. I mean, they were already cracking down on protests and all of that stuff. That's only going to get worse. And it's hindered our ability to protest. If you're in a lockdown, you can't go protest your government. And look at the things that they're trying to do. And again, like I just said, they're doing it in broad daylight. And now we're not going to have the ability to fight back against them effectively. And I mean, this is all, it's all connected. It's all by design. And I don't care. It sounds conspiratorial. Get your tinfoil hat. It's not conspiratorial. This is the shit that's happening. It's happening. Like, this is just reality. And I'm sorry.
All moving history is conspiratorial by nature.
Right.
People have to get together to do things. It only becomes conspiracy theory when it's outside of a mainstream narrative, no matter how many facts you present. Like, that is the problem. People don't even, again, people don't understand the language and what words mean anymore, or that they even have substance. Herd immunity is gone. Natural immunity is gone. A vaccine no longer needs an attenuated version of the virus to be a vaccine. We have gone, you no longer have to have a certain combination of chromosomes to be considered a man or a woman. We have gone over the top. We are putting masks over our children. We are saying bubbles. We are using terminology like the new normal and alone together. Total fucking oxymorons. Language has been lost to the celebritard idiocracy that we have now built.
And that includes our politicians. Like, we've celebritized our politicians. I call them celebriticians now.
Yeah, they are.
They are. I mean, that's exactly what they are. And it's no longer, maybe it's always been that way, but I feel like it's just gotten worse. I think Obama really set it off. It's now become this person that they're above, you can't even criticize them, or you're like a terrible person. How dare you? And people would rather spend their time attacking activists and like everyday people than going after those who have actual power. And that's a real problem. Like, there's this whole subculture of people who just worship politicians, and it's troubling. It's really scary.
Well, you have those celebriticians building the narc culture, right? Like, you have, and people have talked shit about this before, but AOC literally trained her group to introduce words like sus from the fucking spaceship game. What the fuck? Why am I blanking on
Among Us?
Among Us, right?
Oh, G-Hive's gonna come for you, Andrew.
Right.
Here they come.
Just listen. Just follow me out here, right? So she gets all of her followers to watch her play Among Us, play it with her, and introduce the language of like sus, evidence-free guessing on who the bad guy is, shooting him into space and going on like this. Basically, a lack of empathy when doing a logical process. Right? Like, oh, I got it wrong. This person's dead in space. Who cares? Let's just go on to the next thing. And then takes to her email list and asks her millions of people, hey, go on Twitter and report people that say bad things about me because they're untrue. So she built her little army of people that use the language and ideology of this is sus without evidence to then turn them on the internet to the point that it got someone visited by their local police because he wrote an article exposing the fact that she flipped on Israel. And the Capitol Police sent their local police department. 4 months later, she votes for a multi-billion-dollar bill to allow the literal state police or Capitol Police to operate in every state like they're the fucking state highway patrol. While chanting,
totally normal.
defund the police.
Well, the thing is that she's not even a politician in the sense that she was really even sociopathic enough to earn it, right? She went to an audition. You had these other groups that were basically grooming people, not because they thought that they had good ideas, but because they were very malleable. I mean,
marketable. Yeah,
exactly. I mean, does anybody think that woman's smart? Does anybody think that Joe Biden is running the country? Does anybody think that Matt Gaetz doesn't fuck prostitutes? Like, who are you? Like, if you don't think those things are happening, you obviously have a very naive sense of reality, right? And the reason I brought up Gaetz is because, a lot of people deified him for speaking out against big tech and certain issues, but at the same time, he demonized Google employees who walked out because of the drone project and then tried to make it into a China issue. And then I hear, oh, well, no, he's got a fiance and they're very happy. You're kind of stupid if you think that he's not fucking sugar daddy girls. I mean, there's paperwork on it. Sure looks like it to me. There hasn't really.
I don't know who needs to hear this, but you can have a fiance and still fuck prostitutes.
It's weird, right? Like
right.
It happens. It's like not a magical thing. In fact, a lot of people that have been, engaged or married several times, that's kind of their thing. Mm-hmm. That's kind of their thing. So, again, reality is a fucking punch in the mouth for some people. Some people are just so naive because they do live in their own bubble and they act a certain way and they buy in to these propagated personas that we're constantly given. And you hit the nail on the head. They are celebriticians. They're no longer of any kind of substance. Either they represent, the bureaucracy that's been around and the establishment that's been around forever. And now white supremacy is a nice buzz term for some of them. Or they're now portrayed as benevolent savers of the planet or progressives like Pete Buttigieg. I mean, where the fuck did Pete Buttigieg come from? He came straight out of the Rhodes Scholarship.
McKinsey, yeah.
I think it's naval intelligence.
Maybe.
I think he was in one of the military intelligence programs.
All of these people are actors. They're actors. They don't actually have their own opinions.
He stole the Iowa caucus, and I don't it is what it is, but he stole the Iowa caucus from Bernie Sanders with an app created by a group called Shadow Inc.
Totally normal.
Perfectly normal.
These people are not they're not representing us. They represent lobbyists. They don't write the bills. Lobbyists write the bills. All they do is, they go and they vote on what they're told to vote on. And they give, I think it was Justin Amash who gave an interview where he was like, this is all scripted. Like all of this stuff, all the big things you see on C-SPAN and all that stuff, all these meetings, they're all handed like a script of the little speeches that they're going to give. And they have, none of them, I'm sure that there are cliques. It's like high school for psychopaths, right? I'm sure there are cliques and I'm sure there are friend groups and all of that. But they don't hate each other. They are all owned and operated by the exact same people. They all have the same end game in mind. They're all bought and sold by the same people. It's like a soap opera. That's all it is. It's, they're entertaining you as they kill you. Here's the reality TV show for you to watch while we, slaughter you slowly.
In between ads for Boeing, Raytheon, and Lockheed Martin, and then vaccine propaganda.
Right. Totally normal country we got here. It's fine. Everything's fine.
Oh, yeah, but Jason, so I do, as someone who has put out documentaries about information that people don't really get to see all the time, I was wondering what you thought about almost like the escalating number game, right? So Chelsea Manning was one of about 100,000 people that had access to the information that she did. And she was the one in 100,000 that released it. Edward Snowden was maybe one of tens of people that released that information, or that had access to that information that could actually release it. You have people like Daniel Hale that are literal first-hand accounts that released information, like maybe one of 7 people in the room that knew what actually took place. You have situations like Joshua Schultz, where they don't even know who actually released the information, have admitted that in court, but still continue to prosecute him for the Vault 7 leaks just for the principle of it. And he was maybe one of 10, if that had access to the literal server that held all of the super weapons of the United States cyber arsenal. So to me, going from 10 years ago, 1 in 100,000 people having the emotional fortitude to go through this situation, to today you have people like Reality Winner, Joshua Schultz, and the recently released Jeremy Hammond that were a small number of individuals that had access to that, and how there's nowhere left to hide, I guess, that can't be exposed. Like even Project Veritas coming out with the releases of the detention camps on the southern border, showing those heinous conditions as something that's supposedly taken as a right-wing issue. So I was wondering what you thought about the use of whistleblowers and how the numbers used to be so great, and now it's, if 10 people do something wrong, the whistle's getting blown somewhere.
Maybe, maybe not. In certain situations, sure. But again, if we really had any honesty, how many doctors are there in this country? You got to think about that number right there. How many doctors have come out and put their jobs on the line for actual treatments for COVID or come out against those vaccines? How many nurses have you already talked to that, hey, listen, I'm talking to one right now that's about to get reprimanded and talked to again because when her patients start asking her about it, she doesn't like to lie. You know, she wants to give her personal feelings and what she's read about it and et cetera. That's not allowed. So, yeah, I'm glad that we do have some of these whistleblowers. I'm glad that we have some of these sting operations. But I mean, you look at something such as, for instance, you know, I talked a lot of transhumanism, but you had Veritas go in there, get the right-hand man of Zuckerberg from Facebook talking about eugenics and gene editing. Nowhere sauce in the rest of the media. That should be a huge whistleblowing moment. They're talking about the vaccine. They're talking about mRNA. They're talking about CRISPR tech. No fucking where. Even when the mainstream does some really good work, like that signature reduction article. Now, today, guy, is its 3-month anniversary. It's 3 months ago that they admitted to a secret army operating in the United States with no oversight whatsoever. That's an art form known as signature reduction with an army of 60,000 people.
That just makes me think that those are the brain chipped people. Like that first 60,000 they rolled out into the public.
Right.
They're like, okay, let's see what we can do with this many.
Little oopa. You know, crazier things have become reality. But you think about that. I mean, forget about whistleblowers. You have what is supposed to be an authoritative source. An authoritative. They did a very big piece. It's an authoritative source. I've looked, bro. Type in signature reduction anywhere. Look for a video on it. It is nowhere to be found. They didn't cover it on ABC, NBC, CBS, not even in passing, not Fox News, nobody. Listen, I know you got on that tuck, and, you know, I'm a little bit on that tuck train every once in a while. I'm like, oh, cringing. But where are you, Tuckster? You know, I put Jones on the spot when I had him on my show a week and a half, 2 weeks ago.
Isn't he supposed to be back on soon?
He is, dude. That's the, you know, I forgot to bring this up, but just so everybody understands, Rob Dew contracted COVID maybe the night Jones was on my show at a dinner with 5 people where 3 people contracted COVID. He did go into the hospital, had to leave under duress. There's a video of him talking about leaving under duress at the hospital, hooked up to the oxygen machines. He was in rough fucking shape. He sent me this video because I was like trying to connect with him, and I was like, holy shit. And so he left under duress. He got on the budesonide, ivermectin, citromycin, and I'm trying to think what the 4th thing was, but did a video of that. Dr. Richard Bartlett, to his credit, what an incredible man. He also guided Dew through this. And I think about 3 days later, he was off the oxygen machine at home. I mean, he was on vitamins, the whole thing, on the drips, you name it. He's walking like 2 miles a day. I personally talked to him 2 days ago. He sounds really good, but obviously Dew is kind of my avenue to book those things. So Dew might be out of the office another 3 weeks. I mean, he's in fucking rough shape, dude. Ate him up. You know, that's another thing, man. You know, I hate playing footsie. I can't play pretend. You know, from the very beginning of this thing, I said it was very, very real. And I've always talked about this thing being a bioweapon that was released on purpose. And now, unfortunately, what people are being injected with, whether you want to refer to it as a bioweapon or not, is bio-nano military tech developed by DARPA. We have to stop playing pretend this is new, or even that this is experimental, or even if the FDA approves it, that means fuck all. This technology had first become public in the 80s and on the university level. And then throughout that, it had military industrial complex funding, both in front and behind the scenes, but openly. I wonder if I still have this up. Moderna partnered with DARPA. Let me repeat this. Moderna partnered with DARPA in 2013. Okay? That's when they partnered with them. Anybody can look that up. It is, you know, it's factual. You know, in fact, I might even have the video of Dew over here. talking about taking the injection. But for those, I'm sure you guys are aware of who Rob Dew is. He does not look or sound good here. This is when he first gets out.
I'm not asking what's in the infusion. I'm not asking to look at the ingredients in the infusion. I'm rolling up my sleeve and I'm taking the infusion. Because that's what a good Democrat does. Rolls up their sleeves for that infusion. Don't you forget it. There's the infusion. I don't want to know what's in it. I don't want to know who made it. I don't want to know about the studies. I don't want to know if it's gender fluid. I just take that infusion because that's what a good Democrat does. Listens to their masters.
And God bless him for having a good but that right there was his vitamin drip on top of it. So again, this is reality, and I can't really play pretend. We're in a situation where bioweapons that were released are now, the problem is trying to be solved with bioweapons that aren't trying to solve a problem, they're creating another one. We're in World War IV, everybody. World War III happened. That was the war on terror. That was bringing in the surveillance state. And now World War IV is here, and it's asymmetric warfare against the entire human populace to bring in a very transhumanistic future run by a predator class where our souls are no more and humanity is stricken from the planet.
Yeah.
Jason's always bringing like the sunshine and rainbows,
But, so that's,
Limp Bizkit killed it after 20 years, guys. It has been 20 years since I saw Limp Bizkit. I couldn't have had a better time at the concert. Mike Valley actually opened up. If you're not aware of Mike Valley, he's the skateboarder. He's in a couple of the Tony Hawk games, but he's also in the Can't Kill Yourself videos, the precursor to Jackass, where he's literally beating the shit out of mall security guards and parking lot security guards throughout. Very entertaining there. Spirit Box was there. Maybe not my shebango. They put on a decent show. But Limp Bizkit, despite their COVID politics and promoting the vaccine, I still had a great time. Great time. And I encourage other people to have great times. That's another way to win on this, guys. Continue to have a great. The more the more shitty your life is, the less you have a good time. The more you feel defeated, the more these motherfuckers win. Yeah. And I just refuse to be that person. Now, believe me, I was fucking worried about Rob Dew. Like I'm worried about my family right now. I am worried. I don't know what to say. Usually, I'm doing at least 3 videos a day, or if I only do 1 or 2, I'm on the air for an hour, 2 hours, etc. I did a 10-minute video today. I did a recording with Pasta. I'm doing this with you. But like, I'm kind of shook up, man. I could go in any direction all the time, go a little bit off the rails. I understand that, but they want that. And they're creating a scenario where that's going to be constant. Okay. Think about it. We talked about it already. The third shot. Well, the third shot goes with that New York City pass, that key to the city pass. And, if you don't have 3, it doesn't work now. You can't go here. Mm-hmm. You don't have 4, it doesn't work now. You can't go here. You didn't sign up or take this shot or that medication. You can't go here. And that's,
well, that's why it's important for people to turn out to their city halls. That's why it's important for people to turn out to their local council meetings. Little known fact, your state senator and state House of Representatives member receives almost no mail whatsoever from people in their district. None, like almost none. So when they receive one, they generally gets to them because there's maybe getting 2 to 3 per week, if that. So if you continue to send them and you get a couple friends to contact those people while at the same time going to your city councils and making them care, or replacing them, because it's honestly like, 50 petition signatures, 100 petition signatures in most cities to flip a city council seat. You can literally just walk through and change them. So we've literally, since the very beginning, asked people to get to city councils to talk about these sorts of issues. And this is honestly no different, because it's literally at home in your face at this point that information is being restricted and taken from you, that you're not allowed to go to any alternative source, that it is what your school board, state, or federal government mandates that you have to listen to.
That should terrify everybody. I mean, I know that's what we do here, but the whole attack on information and our right to know things and our right to have conversations, that's terrifying. I don't care what you think of COVID. People should be able to have conversations about ivermectin. They should be able to have conversations about alternative treatments. They should be able to have conversations. I mean, shit, Jimmy Dore got vaccinated and then talked about the symptoms that he was having post-vaccination and got murdered on social media just for talking about the things that he was dealing with, like openly. And that's he got vaccinated. And then like the vaccine people were freaking out because he was being honest about the side effects that he was having. And you should want that. You should want, if you have like a vaccine and somebody gets it and they have side effects, you should want them to talk about that so that, you can better the vaccine. But that's not how people's brains work. And all of a sudden he's anti-vax. How is he anti-vax? He got fucking vaccinated. You make no sense. It makes no sense. But the fact that we're not even allowed to have those conversations is the problem. That's what everybody should be worried about.
He said that his grandpa literally died 2 days after getting vaccinated.
And he got slammed on social media. People made fun of him.
Working every day, thought he was doing his civic duty getting vaccinated, and then passes away.
Yeah, and then people shit all over Nico House.
And the autopsy is refused to his grandmother. She's like, hey, I would like to know what happened. No.
Yeah. That should trouble everybody, y'all. The fact that we can't have conversations about certain things, the fact that stories about Joe Biden's son and his corruption in Ukraine are things that will get the New York Post taken off of social media. That's scary. They're trying to control. They're seeking global jurisdiction over information and journalism, and that is going to impact literally everything else that you care about. That's what we're doing here. And, it's a big deal. I don't know how to get people to understand how big of a deal that is, but it's a big fucking deal. And that's why you should fight for Julian Assange. Period.
100%.
Sorry, that's my rant for the day.
No, I totally agree. Listen, guys, I got a jam.
Yeah, we're wrapping up. We're wrapping up.
I do want to thank you guys as always for having me on.
Yeah, thanks for coming.
I understand I was all over the place, but same basics, guys. And unfortunately, this slow rollout that I talked about 18 months ago is gaining more and more steam. It's not slowing down. And that's the whole thing. People laughed at me when I said that this was not going away. And, there were really people out there that believed 2 weeks to slow the spread. Just wear the mask, dude. Won't be another month. Even through last summer, don't worry. By the end of the summer, everything's going to be okay. And
when you talked about vaccination passports, everybody laughed at you. That's not going to happen. They're not going to do that. Oh, really?
Yeah. Well, here we are. So again, everybody come over to Rockfin. That's where they're empowering me through free speech. I know that you guys are on there as well. And they're not enslaving us through a false narrative. So once again, I love you guys, and I will see you on the flip. Thanks for the invite, Andrew. We'll see you, Misty.
Thanks Jason. Buddy. All right, guys. So I'm Misty. You can find me on Twitter at Sarcasm Stardust. I have another show called Facts on the Ground. We just interviewed. Who did we interview? Let's see. Oh, no, but so we actually just interviewed Magnus, which that'll be fun. My trolls will love it. But we talked to him about the the Damn Wars events that are going on in September, which we are also holding events for on the 10th, 11th, and 12th of September. And then actually Jesse interviewed Garland Nixon tonight. I couldn't make it. I had some shit come up and I had to, which bums me the fuck out because I was really excited to talk to Garland Nixon. But Jesse said that it went well, so that should be going up soon. And then also I have Bitch with Comrade Misty every Wednesday at 7 p.m. Eastern. This week I have Christina Livio, who is a politician who is running in Florida's 24th. I think that's right. Christ, I think that's right. But she's awesome. She actually came to our Assange protest in January. She came up with Nico from Florida, and she's awesome. You guys know I don't do electoral politics, but I like her very much as a person. So we're going to have a great conversation. That'll be tomorrow at 7. The week after that, I have Sharif, who was one of the national organizers for the March for Medicare for All. And then maybe that's wrong. I don't know. It might be Sharif or Magnus. I can't remember who I booked, but it'll be like flip-flop. I don't have my calendar right here, but like 1 week will be Sharif and the next week will be Magnus or flip-flop. I can't remember which. Also, I have Danny Haifong that's going to be coming on, I think it's like September 7th or something. So I have like a really awesome lineup of people getting ready to come up on Bitch, which I'm really excited about. I was just telling somebody, I think I was telling Magnus earlier that show was so much fun and it's like therapy that I almost wish it was more than once a week because there's always so much to bitch about. Like 2 hours a week is not enough to get it all out.
You need to bring Bermas on there with you.
Oh my God, that would be so fun.
Him go. That would be
I could
wonderful.
honestly just be like, hi everybody, welcome to Bitch with Comrade Misty. My guest today is Jason Bermas. Talk, Jason. Just go.
I love it.
Yeah. So yeah, definitely check out tomorrow. It'll be Christine Olivia. That's going to be fun. Obviously, Daniel still has his billboard campaign going on. Donate to that. I'm like lazy as fuck and haven't gotten the one going for the one outside the shoe. I need to do that. I'm just, it's like back to school bullshit and all that, you know, and I have a fucking toothache that, sorry. Anyway, this right here could turn into an episode of bitch because there's a lot to bitch about. But I think that's it. I don't know.
We got the End the Damn Wars Free Assange Fuck Censorship event. We really need some help fundraising. If you can help us share the link around, that would be awesome. I know it is a very different time than what everyone was in 2020 with the way that the world has rolled out. But if you can donate, please do. If you cannot, just please help us share it. I'll drop the link in chat for everybody. But if you can, please join us. If you cannot, please hold your own local event on September 11th. Please go out to your city councils now and talk about the issues that bother you, that you would like to see not happen within your city, or that you would like to see your council people speak up about, because that is your most direct form of government to help you hold people accountable. But yeah, so.
Oh, wait, I forgot. I'm going to be on Fault Lines tomorrow, 8:45 a.m. Fault Lines Radio. Sorry, that's the one thing I was forgetting. Sorry, just remembered. Jamaro asked me to come on. I'm going to be talking about what WikiLeaks exposed about Afghanistan 11 years ago and how that matters now. Because, you know, Julian told us 11 years ago that this was all bullshit and nobody listened to him. So, you know, here we are. So, yeah, that's it. That's all I got.
Cool.
And thanks to the chat and everybody that's watching. We love you. You're the best.
We will see you guys next time.